Hi, I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Last week I was saying that I didn't have a whole lot planned for this week, and I mentioned that there was a little bit of a mystery or confusion around some Stitch dictionaries on the Amazon reviews for them. And so I got to the bottom of that mystery a little bit, and I was going to walk you guys through that and let you know a little bit about like which ones I think you should buy and which ones I think you should leave alone, and explain how all the confusion got started there. So yeah, I guess I'm going to give people a few minutes before I get into that a little bit. I do have all of my Stitch dictionaries piled up over here. I'm going to push my laptop out of the way and I can slide these over so you can see. So I've got this whole pile. So if you guys want to talk Stitch dictionaries at all, we can do that. I've also got my laptop out, and so if we've got other things that we need to talk about with that, we can do that as well. So, as far as project updates, I really haven't had a whole lot of time to crochet. I've been working on this baby blanket that I've shared a couple of times now. I'm making it out of comfy cotton blend and struggling a little bit with its splittiness. But other than that, it's been going pretty well. So I'd love to know what you guys are up to, and welcome to anybody out there watching. Not much going on in chat, but welcome if you're out there watching, and feel free to chat or ask questions or whatever you'd like while we're streaming tonight. So I'm going to get into it a little bit. I guess we'll switch to the computer and I'll show you the 4 books in question. And I thought that I had all 4 books on site, like at home here. And it turns out that one of them, well, 3 of them were damaged in the basement flooding that we had. One of them was badly damaged and I threw it away, and apparently I never replaced it. So we're going to have to work off of the title, and you'll see why it's not really all that important that I have that one, because it'll be relatively apparent what happened here. So there's 4 books in question right now. The Crochet Stitch Dictionary by Sarah Hazel. This is one of the first Stitch dictionaries that I bought, and I really like the way it's laid out. So that one, a very good book, and here we can look and see. They've got like a little preview thing. I can kind of flip through a few of the pages. It has one of the things that I really like about Stitch dictionaries, and that is a picture index. So not only can you flip through and know what all the stitches are in the dictionary, but you can also see them, like a teeny tiny swatch of them. So that's nice. I also like that it's laid out. You can see here basic stitches, and then fans and shells, puffs and bobbles, relief stitches. So there's like categories, so you can try and find. I have a really bad habit of finding a stitch that I like and then forgetting what book it was in, forgetting what page it was on, not writing down where it was at, and so then I spend 3 hours like flipping through stitch dictionaries, and it gets a lot of it helps it speed up a lot if I can look at the swatches, because usually I can remember what color it was or something like that. So I can kind of bridge that gap and make it go a little faster. So we've got Crochet Stitch Dictionary, 200 Essential Stitches with Step-by-Step Photos. That's by Sarah Hazel. Then we have a book over here called The Step-by-Step Guide to 200 Crochet Stitches by Tracy Todd Hunter. Book looks very similar inside, and I'll show you here in a second when I flip through the other book by Tracy Todd Hunter. Oops, it looks like I opened 2 of them twice. I'm missing one of the Sarah Hazel books. Give me 1 second. See if we can fix this here. Okay, so Crochet Stitch Dictionary by Sarah Hazel. Step-by-Step Guide to 200 Crochet Stitches by Tracy Todd Hunter. Then we have 200 Crochet Stitches, a practical guide with actual size swatches, charts, and step-by-step instructions by Sarah Hazel. And then we have a book called 200 More Crochet Stitches by Tracy Todd Hunter. And if you look at these books, they don't really feel like they're part of a series. They don't really look like one is the sequel to another, but what you've got here is a book called Step-by-Step Guide to 200 Crochet Stitches by Tracy Todd Hunter, and then a book called 200 More Crochet Stitches by Tracy Todd Hunter. And so you could logically conclude that these are 2 books by the same author. One has 200 stitches, and the other has 200 stitches, and that they would not have any overlap. So like, I would, if I'm looking for stitch dictionaries, if I found one that I liked by Tracy Todd Hunter and then I wanted to buy a follow-up, I would buy the 200 More Stitches. I have some books down here that are the Harmony Guide 300 Stitches and then 220 More Crochet Stitches. Like, they're a part of a series. But what happened here was, what we've got here are 4 different books with 2 different sets of crochet stitches. And what you've got here is you've got the Crochet Stitch Dictionary by Sarah Hazel, and then you've got 200 Crochet Stitches by Sarah Hazel. And these are actually exactly the same book. So we're going to switch cameras and I'll show you a little bit here. Like I said, one of these got a little bit damaged. But this book and this book are exactly the same content, but one is the UK version. So what happened was, whoever made this, Search Press in the UK, had Sarah Hazel do the first in a set, and then Tracy Todd Hunter did the follow-up book with 200 More Crochet Stitches. So you've got a book called 200 Crochet Stitches, and then a book called 200 More, and the books, if you look at them inside, they're near identical in styling, but they just contain 200 different stitches. So you've got 2 different books. They have, that might be a little blown up by the light, but they look exactly the same. They've got a chart. They've got a little step-by-step tutorial. They've got written instructions. So what you've got here is the UK and US version of a book. And then, okay, so you've got the UK and the US version, and then this is the follow-up. In the US, though, the book that I'm missing here that I can show on screen to fill in the gap. We've got this book over here called 200 Crochet Stitches by Tracy Todhunter. There's nothing to indicate that this 200 Crochet Stitches is a follow-up to the Crochet Stitch Dictionary. But they're written exactly like a first book and a sequel. And so people were rightfully confused. They did this really stupidly. In the UK, it makes total sense. They just had two different authors who each did a Crochet Stitch Dictionary. In the US, they made a mess of it by publishing them under two different titles. And then they made it even worse by calling the two books by Tracy Todhunter, which have exactly the same content, like verbatim. The only difference is the UK versus US terminology. So I guess I shouldn't say verbatim, but the charts are identical, the pictures are identical, the whole Stitch Dictionary is identical, but they just changed from US to UK terminology. And so what you end up with is you've got 4 different titles, but only 2 different books in unique content. So if you're looking for a really nice Stitch Dictionary, I really like the Crochet Stitch Dictionary. I've found like a really nice variety of stitches. This is the one by Sarah Hazel in the US terminology. If you happen to use UK terminology, you can buy the same book in UK terminology by Sarah Hazel, 200 Crochet Stitches. But don't buy both, because they have identical content. They have all of the same stitches. One's UK, one's US. So you've got your choice between the two, but you don't need both. And then the same with 200 more crochet stitches and the step-by-step guide to 200 crochet stitches by Tracy Todhunter. Those have exactly the same content. One is UK, one is US. So if you're in the UK, you want 200 crochet stitches and 200 more crochet stitches. One by Sarah Hazel, one by Tracy Todhunter. If you're in the US, you want the Crochet Stitch Dictionary and the step-by-step guide to 200 crochet stitches. One by Sarah Hazel, one by Tracy Todhunter. Those are they're 2 parts of a set. But you do not need all 4 books. So that's where all the confusion comes in on Amazon. And I don't know if I made that any better, if I just confused everybody more. But basically, there are, like I said, 4 books, but only 2 different sets of content. It's just whether you get the UK versions or the US versions. I don't even know why they've really got the UK versions listed. I guess there's probably a small subset of US crocheters using US Amazon who want the UK version. But it just is mostly like asking for trouble as far as, you know, getting people confused and then upset. And you can look through the reviews if you want. There's a lot of people talking about, I bought this book expecting it to be different, and it's exactly the same. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful to anybody out there, but it was a really poor choice on the publisher's part, I guess. They probably should have published them under the same title and then just put US crochet terms, UK crochet terms, or did something to indicate that they were part of a series by 2. It's weird to do a series by 2 different authors. It's weirder yet to release it in both the UK and US. And then they named them such overlapping terms that they were just asking for trouble and for people to be upset. So, Zaina, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm glad you enjoyed the explanation, and hopefully it wasn't terribly confusing. But they are definitely good books. I think I like the Crochet Stitch Dictionary better than I like the 200 Crochet Stitches by Tracy Todhunter. That one had had some interesting stitches, but a lot of overlap in other books that I have, and so it wasn't as, like, appealing to me, I guess. The Crochet Stitch Dictionary can be on the basic side. There are some interesting stitches in here. But yeah, it's just one of the first ones I owned, and so it's one that I always go back to. I do have a handful of other stitch dictionaries if you guys want to talk about those a little bit. I have reviews on some of these. You can kind of check out the channel. I'm pretty sure I've got a review on this one. This is one of my favorite stitch dictionaries. This is Melissa Leapman's indispensable stitch collection for crocheters. This one's really nice. It's got good pictures. So what I always look for in a stitch dictionary is nice pictures. This one's particularly nice because you can see both sides of the fabric. At least on that particular stitch. Looks like it's not the case on all of them. Yeah. So some of them have both the front and the back side of the stitches. Others have just a single stitch, but they all have a chart. You can see down here or up here. And then you've got written instructions up here. So picture, chart, written instructions is what I really like out of a stitch dictionary. And that's true of all of these. You can kind of just flip through and you can see there's charts and written instructions all the way through. So this one is one that I really like. I also really like this stitch dictionary. I don't think I have a review on this one, but I came across this dictionary when we were out of town, I think, in Michigan. But this is Crochet Every Which Way Stitch Dictionary. And the thing that makes this one really cool, so it also has pictures, charts, and written instructions. I think we're struggling a little bit with the glossy pages and the lighting, but so you've got picture, you've got a chart over here, and written instructions up here. But the thing that makes this one really unique, and hopefully you can see this a little bit, is it tells you how to add stitches into the center, and then it also shows you how to increase and decrease on the edges. So like in this particular one, you could see how you could use this to maybe form a fingerless glove or to make the backbone in a shawl or something like that. And so you've got this basic stitch on this side where you can, or just like over here where you can show how you can make like a rectangle or a square, but then the increases and decreases, showing you how to add those in. That's something I really struggle with, and it's part of the reason that I don't do a lot of pattern design on my own, is because figuring that out is actually really a challenge in a lot of cases. But this one shows you how to add it both to the center and on the edges. So this one is one that I really, really like and have been trying to use to make a few of my own patterns, to try and figure out how to get that shaping in there correctly. CZ's here. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. What other ones? I have these Harmony Guide ones. There's every so often I find a stitch I really like in these, but these are not my favorite by a long shot. The stitches inside are very small. So you've got like a, dozen pictures here on one page. They do cram in both a chart and written instructions, but it's so hard to see some of the pictures. You don't really know what you're getting. And then I think my biggest complaint with this, and I'll see if I can find an example, is that a lot of the stitches are not unique. Let me see if I can find an example of what I mean. The Catherine wheel is a really one that sticks out in my head as a particularly bad example in here. Those are motifs. I don't love when they like gum up a stitch dictionary with motifs, but sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of variation in what you're looking at. But here you can see the Catherine wheel. They, like, 3 of the stitches in this book are the Catherine wheel as a solid stitch. And then, so you got the Catherine wheel as a solid stitch, the Catherine wheel as a 2-tone, and the Catherine wheel as a 3-tone. And it's kind of lame because, like, I could just make things different colors. Like, I don't think that gets to count as 3 stitches out of a 300 stitch dictionary. So I don't know that. It is nice to see it worked in different like color combinations and patterns because stitches work up very different sometimes when you change colors up. But that one just felt like, I don't know, it wasn't. And that actually happens a lot in this book. So even on this other side, there's a floret stitch, 1, 2, and 3, and it's just done in 1, 2, and 3 colors. And so it's kind of, I don't know, cheaty a little bit. Like, I don't know. It just feels like, okay, so you've got 6 stitches, but really we've only covered 2 different types of pattern. So that one feels a little bit lame. Like I said, I don't use this one. Pictures aren't great. I shouldn't say I don't use it. I rarely use it. There are occasions where I've pulled stitches out of there that I do like, but that one's a little fewer and further between. The 500 Crochet Stitches Ultimate Stitch Bible is also a good one. Though this one is a little motif heavy for my tastes. So they count the motifs as stitches. But this one's got a nice edging section. So you can see like the different edgings up at the top. Again, you've got a chart and a written pattern. Tip that up a little bit so you can see you've got written pattern, chart, edgings. There's the motif section that goes on for several pages. And then you get back to like plain stitches. My little bookmarks are falling down to the bottom. So there's a variety in stitches, but this one again has a few where it's they use multicolors as unique stitches. Not as many as the Harmony Guide ones. But yeah, so there's that one. This one's pretty good. I would say the ones that I use the most often are probably the Crochet Every Which Way and the Melissa Leapman's Indispensable. What is that? Indispensable Stitch Collection for Crocheters. That's a heck of a title.
I feel like we spent a lot of time looking through the Japanese ones.
Yeah, so I was going to move on to the Japanese ones. So I do have 2 Japanese stitch dictionaries, and so I would say of the ones that I like meet all of my criteria, which is a stitch, like a nice picture, a chart, and written instructions. Those 2 that I pointed out are the 2 that I use the most. But when it comes down to it, the ones that I think I actually go to first and use the most often are these 2 Japanese stitch dictionaries. These do not have written English instructions, only charts. And the nice thing about charts is charts are universal. So regardless of language, if you recognize the symbol and you know what that symbol means in whatever language you would translate it to, you can follow the chart. So this one's actually the one that I use the most, is this 300 stitch dictionary. And you can see it's got nice pictures inside and then a chart next to it. There's a couple of spots where the chart is not right next to it. So you can see here there's 2 patterns, but only 1 chart down at the bottom. What you have to do is in the text right under one of the stitches. Looks like this one here, 233. There's the number 106, and if you flip to page 106, you'll find the chart for it. And so like in the back here. Where are they at? There's a couple of pages of just charts that correspond to those few that they couldn't cram them all onto one page. But I use these quite a bit, and I was actually pretty sad because the two that I owned both got ruined in the flooding that we had. It turned out all of my Stitch dictionaries were on a bookcase behind me, and when we got like flood water in the basement, they were
all in a pile on the
oh,
ground.
were they in a pile on the ground? A whole bunch of my books were on the bookcase, and when it flooded, the bookcase expanded and the shelf fell down, and so a lot of my books fell in the water. But my husband's saying that my Stitch dictionaries were, I think we had them out to do videos, and they were just piled up next to my seat. Which is a good reminder that I probably should put some yarn away over here because it's all just sitting out. But yeah, these Japanese Stitch dictionaries, I can't really tell you how to search for these. I just search Japanese crochet and then the number 300. But like I said, I was pretty sad because I had to replace these, and they were not incredibly cheap to replace. And so this is the Japanese language version. You can also get it in simplified Chinese, I believe. And if that doesn't matter, it doesn't really matter which version you buy. I read neither Japanese nor Chinese, but I do read crochet charts, and so that works just fine for me. But there's a lot of pretty stitches in here. Let's see if I can find my favorite one. There's one. It's green.
There's one of just motifs.
Yeah, there's a lot. So crochet must be relatively popular in Japan, or at least it was at some point in time, because there is a ton of Japanese crochet books. You can get most of what I could find I can get on Amazon. Though I guess I should say I've looked around Amazon and there are a lot of options, is a better way of saying what I said. Trying to find my favorite stitches. I think it's in this book. Here it is. This one here I think is so cool, and I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with it. But, the green in the middle here. It's got these open squares, and then there's like a fan worked, but like it's got this nice big square open triangle above it. So it's like squared off, but only half of it's filled in with crochet. And I really like this pattern for whatever reason. But if you look in the chart over here, you can see that each of the little points on the top of these leafy bits are picots, and this stitch would just take an absolute, like, massive amount of time to complete, because it's a double crochet and then 3 chains, and then you slip stitch back, double crochet, 3 chains, slip stitch back, and so like each little section is like 30 stitches when it comes down to it. It's not actually 30, it's 3 times 4, 12, 16. Like each one of these is like 16 or 20 stitches that you have to make just to make one little square. So it's a lot of things going on, and I'm pretty sure that this stitch would really only look good in like thread crochet. I don't think it would look great in like a big heavy yarn. You'd have to do it with something pretty fine, but I don't know. I've thought about doing something with that stitch. I don't know what it's gonna be. Maybe a table runner or something that could be lacy. Zaina's asking if I know how to convert a stitch from a dictionary to be in the round, like how to turn the corner. So yes and no. I've kind of like fudged my way into it in a lot of cases, so I'll find a stitch. If you're talking about turning a corner, like using it as an edge for a blanket, a lot of times you can just skip stitches or add stitches so that you can work the repeat on the corner. It's usually best if you can hit the corner with the stitch repeat. So if you're doing a fan, you want the fan to go around the corner. Sometimes you have to add a couple of stitches. So if normally you're working a 5-stitch fan, you might have to put 7 in the corner just to make the turn. But let's say you're doing a stitch where you're doing 5 double crochets, skip 2, maybe single crochet, skip 2, 5 double crochets. If you get to the corner and your corner stitch is like part of your skip 2, you could just skip 1 so that you could hit the corner. Or, tighten it up a little bit. You might have to pull stitches back and like only skip 1 here or there, so that you can make the repeat land on the corner. If we're talking about doing something in the round as far as like a cowl, you have 2 options. You can adjust your stitch counts so that your repeats are happening. And I'm not very good at working the math out, but I can just work the stitch and figure out exactly how many repeats it needs to be, and then either fix it a little bit, like I said, skip a stitch or add an extra stitch in as you're working around. Or what you can do is work it flat and seam it up. So if you're having trouble converting it and it really just wants to be worked flat, you can work it flat and seam it. And you've got 2 options when you work it flat and seam it. You can work back and forth in short rows, that would be the height of the cowl, or you can work long rows and make it the whole round of the cowl. So it just depends on how you want to end up. But yeah, it's a little bit of just trial and error. I know that's not a great explanation, but it's a little tricky to say because every stitch is a little bit different. But I've worked a lot of stitches that I've pulled out of dictionaries into the edges of blankets. So I have a skip cutter and I've cut a lot of edges, and you just put whatever amount of single crochets into the blanket as however many holes you cut. And so it's really hard to nail stitch repeats if you have no idea how many stitches you've got working. It might end up being a number that you absolutely wouldn't have picked, but you can just, in a lot of cases, you can just skip an extra single crochet, or you can, only skip 1 when you were supposed to have skipped 2, things like that. And it ends up that it really doesn't matter. As long as you don't skip 1, like if you're supposed to be skipping 2, you work a couple of stitches, you skip 2, you work a couple of stitches, you skip 2. As long as you don't skip all of, like if you have to get rid of some stitches, you should try and spread them out over a longer length. Zana saying, thank you, I appreciate it. I'm trying to do a baby blanket of my own design from the center out. It's proven to be a challenge. Yeah, I've worked a couple of baby blankets from the center out. They're all odd shapes. I've done a granny hexagon, and I've done a star blanket. And the granny hexagon was fine because it was just a lovey, but the star blanket was miserable because as you kept getting bigger and bigger, the points on the stars were just so many stitches back and forth. But yeah, trying to get it to line up from the center out will be a little bit of a challenge because your stitch counts are going to change every time you go around. And so you're going to, unless you're working a stitch that works into spaces, like the granny square style motif, where you're always working into the gaps between stitches, and so it doesn't really matter what the stitch counts are, because there's always going to be increasing gaps. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge to try and figure out how to add extra stitches in so that each time you go around, you're adding it. What I would do there is probably try and work additional stitches into your corners. So if you're say you're working like a shell, what you'd want to do is maybe on round 1, you would put 2 extra stitches and 2 extra stitches around your shell. And then on the next round, you can kind of use those 2 extra stitches to build on the shells in the next one. So let's say it's, a 5-stitch shell. If on round 1 you do a 5-stitch shell in the corner, but you put 2 little V stitches on the outside, on the next round you could put a 5-stitch shell, a 5-stitch shell, a 5-stitch shell, and you've increased without making it all ruffly on the corner. So yeah, you've got a little bit of play with that a little bit, and I am not an amazing crochet designer. I really enjoy following patterns, but I don't have my skills up to snuff, I guess, as far as figuring out stitch counts and writing down everything I did and all that. I can muddle my way through making up a pattern. You guys saw my mermaid. Here's my mermaid. So this was the mermaid I showed last week on stream. And, I figured this whole part out, and I figured out how to add the extra stitches so that this would curve around her bottom part here, so that it would lay flat. Because if you put, I needed it to come from all the way over here and be taller to go around here. And so, I added some ease into the pattern and whatnot, but I would be terrible at telling you how exactly I did it. And I'm also pretty bad about writing down what I did. I always think that I can go back and count later, and that is just not true. So, but thanks for the question. That's what I think I would do, is probably just try and use partial repeats, to figure out how to do the increases. That stitch dictionary that I shared with you, this Every Which Way stitch dictionary, does have a lot of nice resources for figuring out how to add stitches internal. There was that one that I showed. So this one here, you can see that they've shown how to make an increase around a corner. So they're showing you how to go about adding more down this vein. And this would be a very similar thing to increasing inside of a blanket. So possibly picking this stitch dictionary up might show you a little bit of how other designers are using it. You can see there's another stitch where they've shown you how to increase up like a spine here. And so you would just do this a little bit more aggressively to make it a 90 degree. Actually, I think you do it a little less aggressively to make it a 90 degree turn. If you were making a square blanket or a rectangular blanket. But most of the stitches show you how to increase down what I would call a spine, for a shawl, but would easily be convertible over to a blanket. So, this one is Every Which Way Stitch Crochet Every Which Way Stitch Dictionary.
It's not.
Is it?
Crochet every way.
Oh, well, I still can't read. Here, you can read the title. It's Crochet Every Way Stitch Dictionary by Dora Orenstein. So, I'm sorry, I can't type it all. Jeez. I guess I need to go to bed. I don't even know. My words don't make any sense. But yeah, that's one that I thought was really cool. I came across it I think it's when we were at that Arnie's place in Michigan that I found it, and didn't get it while I was there, and thought about it after a while. I kind of could convince myself that I didn't really need another stitch dictionary, and then by the time I was home, I was like, yeah, I need to get that. So I picked that up. But yeah, so I like having stitch dictionaries around. I think it's kind of fun to just pick a stitch and work it up. The blanket that I'm working on right now is a crinkle stitch, and so it's you can just kind of flip through a dictionary and find that stitch and just work the whole stitch up, for a whole blanket. I also like it's a little bit difficult to find baby blankets that have really, really tight, hole-free stitches. A lot of people really don't like open stitches for baby blankets. I actually don't mind them. But for whatever reason, I really like the way knit blankets look versus crochet blankets. And I think what I like about them is how densely packed the stitches are. And so I found a handful. I have tutorials on the granny spike stitch and the interlocking shell stitch, both of which are very, very tight nesting stitches that don't leave a lot of gap. So I really like the way those look worked up. But yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been kind of a slow week. I haven't really done a whole lot of crochet, so I don't have a whole lot to show you. I really haven't done any shopping. I bought some fabric, but other than that, I didn't actually buy any yarn. The Joann Fabric by Me does not have an amazing selection. A lot of times we have to go out of town to get the stuff that I want, and we haven't really been out of town all that much, and we didn't go to Joann when we were. So, and I guess I looked through Michael's too by me, and they didn't have almost anything interesting going on. The yarn selection around me has not been amazing for a while. It gets a little bit better in the winter, but generally, not fantastic. So, if you guys have additional questions, I'd love to take those. Looks like my husband also put in the Japanese crochet book that I was showing. One of them, the 300 stitches. The other one is a 200 stitch dictionary, and it's very similar, just has charts and pictures, and I kind of go back and forth between them. If you want to see more about any of these, or if you have other questions not related to stitch dictionaries, I'd love to take those as well. The one thing that I will mention, so all of the stitch dictionaries that I showed you, I own and bought and paid for and whatnot, but I've done some other reviews, and those I took out from the library. And if you live in an area that has a pretty good library system, even if the library itself is not great, if they offer borrowing from neighboring libraries, you usually can get access to most of the stitch dictionaries and at least try them out. A couple of these are books, like the Melissa Leapman's is a book that I bought because I checked it out from the library and I loved it. But there were probably, I don't know, how many stitch dictionaries do you think I brought home? Like 20 or 30 at some point. Like I had 5 here, 5 there. I would return them and get other ones out. But there were probably 20 different stitch dictionaries that I had checked out. And of them, I think I really, really liked maybe 4 or 5 of them. There are some real terrible ones out there. I'm trying to think of the really bad one. It was a big white book with white swatches against colored backgrounds. I might have done a review on it.
Yeah.
I really did not care for that book. It was a lot. I think it was a 500 stitch dictionary. The stitches were not particularly easy to see. The yarn that they used was a little on the fuzzy side. It was not a good book. There were a couple others that were relatively bland.
I think that was the complete book of crochet stitch designs.
Yeah, I think so. The complete book of crochet stitch designs. It was not thrilling. And if you like that book, like, nothing against it, just, it was not for me, and I don't recommend it. But like I said, the 3 things that I look for are written instructions, good pictures, and a chart if I can get it. I probably would prefer a chart highlighting a stitch repeat over written instructions if I can only have one. So, like, if my choices are only one type of instructions or the other, I would probably pick a chart. And almost always when you have a chart, they highlight the repeat in the chart. And so that I find easier to understand. And like I said, I really like the Japanese crochet books. And those only have charts. So I think between the two, I would pick only a chart. But there are some other features that I really like. I really like a picture index. I care nothing about having crochet instructions in the front. Some of them do, some of them don't. But I don't need basic crochet instructions, so that doesn't really sway me one way or another. I don't really care about an index in the back. Or I guess it's a glossary in the back, an index in the front, or I like visual visual indexes in the front. I don't really care about a glossary in the back, either of terms or of like a list of names, because it's unlikely that I'll remember the name. Though it's funny, I don't really care if there's a list of them, but I really do like stitch dictionaries that name the stitches, because I might not be able to remember what it was, but I like to be able to communicate to to viewers what it might be called. So if you're looking for the stitch in a dictionary, or you're trying to compare it to another stitch you were looking at, I like to know what it's generally called. I ran into that problem with the granny square, or the granny spike stitch. I had pulled that one out of the Japanese crochet book, and it was just a stitch, didn't have a name along with it, not even in Japanese. And I actually had to post that as a picture to my Discord group, I think, and they finally were able to let me know what it was called so that I could publish the video, because I didn't know, you can't really publish a stitch tutorial video unless it's got a name, because YouTube works on searches, and nobody would find stitch 137 out of, Japanese crochet 300 book. Like, it wasn't a popular enough thing to post, and so it would just never have been found. Where under the granny spike stitch, it actually gets some views and people can actually find it, because that's what they're looking for. The trade-off there is that if you don't know that you're looking for the granny spike stitch, you just want an interesting stitch, that you probably wouldn't find the video unless somebody shared it to you. Stamping Bandit asked what I think the best book of them all is. It's a little bit depending on what you are looking for, but probably overall that this is probably the best in the group, because it has those extra features. So this is Crochet Every Way Stitch Dictionary by Dora Orenstein. And the thing that I think makes this the best book overall is, again, not only does it show you how to do increases and decreases on the edges, it also shows you how to, in most cases, expand down a center vein. So you've got how to do a normal square down here. If I lift this up, you can see just a normal rectangle. Then how to do increases and decreases, up and down, and how to do an increase up the center to make like a shawl or something that would increase up the center like that. I guess maybe a hat would have a few increases. Even like if you were going to turn it into a fingerless glove, a lot of times you need to increase up the thumb side. And so you can work it basically flat over here, but you need to get the increases along the side. And so it's, I think overall, I don't even remember if this one has a picture glossary up front, because that really would make it win really well. There's a whole section about how to shape a neckline, how to do circular shaping. So no, it does not have a picture index up front. It does have a basic pattern layout, or not a basic pattern layout, but a basic stitch layout. So closed stitches, mesh and fillet and easy laces, shells, more laces, undulating stitches. So it does have categories, so you could maybe like find what you're looking for if you had some idea. But there's a lot of interesting patterns in here. But yeah, that feature where it shows you how to do increases and decreases, I think makes this probably above and beyond any other stitch dictionary. So you can see if I tip it down there, this one's sorry. This one is spider fillet, but I wanted to show that side. So you can see just like a really odd, unique one, but you can see how they showed you to kind of get some extra stitches in there, and it's a little bit different mesh, but it would be how you'd get extra stitches kind of worked in there. So I think that's probably the most challenging part, like in my head, is trying to figure out how you're going to get more repeats into a space. So I think that's, if you could only buy one, I think it would probably be this one. It doesn't have anywhere near the highest amount of stitches. It's only 125 stitch dictionary. But that feature really makes it well worth it. It also doesn't have any filler or fluff in this dictionary. So there's no edging, there's no motifs, there's no Tunisian crochet. It's 125 regular crochet stitches, split into some categories. So I don't mind any of those other sections necessarily, but I don't really give bonus points for having them. Occasionally it's nice to have an edging section, but most stitches could be an edging if you kind of worked it out a little bit. But it is nice to have unique edging stitches sometimes. I don't care anything for motifs. As far as if I was going to work a motif thing, it would probably be from a pattern. I don't think I would seek out motifs to design off of. It's just not what I seek out in crochet. And then Tunisian is fine. Occasionally I'll work a Tunisian shawl or something like that, but I don't seek out a Tunisian stitch dictionary, or at least sections of Tunisian in my stitch dictionary. So those features are available in a lot of books, but like I said, I don't give bonus points for them, but I don't think I give negative points for having them. With one caveat, if it's a like 200 stitch dictionary and like only 75 of the stitches are actually stitches and they've filled it with a whole lot of extra other stuff, then I get a little judgy.
I think that's how the little tiny book that you reviewed was.
Yeah.
I remember one of them we reviewed was like a little...
Yeah, I think I reviewed like a little pamphlet, basically. It was like 50 pages and like...
It had a lot of pages to it. But
it was just...
I think it was like 200 stitches or something, but it was like 100 edgings.
Yeah. Yeah, so there... You can look through. We posted the playlist there on the individual reviews. A lot of those were library books, so I don't have them out in front of me. Because, well, for two reasons. One, because obviously I didn't keep the library books, but two, because I opted not to buy them. Because they just were not for me. Either I didn't like the photography is actually a big one for me. If the photography is terrible, I won't seek that stitch out, and so it's no good. As far as I'm concerned, like if you can't see what's going on, you're not going to use it, and therefore makes a terrible stitch dictionary. But yeah, the only thing that I would say could make this book any better would be if it was spiral bound. I did get one stitch dictionary or maybe two from the library that both were spiral bound. And that made such a huge difference when working with a stitch dictionary because it would open and lay flat. This one will kind of balance here, but like if I go here, it just closes itself back up. This one is a little bit nice that it has the fold out, cover, which means you can sort of use it as a bookmarker to kind of hold your place, so that way if it keeps closing up on you, you can stick that in there, and then at least you can keep reopening the book. But it doesn't really want to stay flat. It wants to close back up on itself. So the couple of Stitch dictionaries that I've seen spiral bound are really nice because they'll open up flat and lay flat, and then stay that way so that you can work out of them. So that would be the only thing that could make this book a little bit better, is being spiral bound. So yeah, let's see. Stampin' Bandit says you can go to Staples and they will spiral bind it for you. That would actually be pretty cool to do. I don't know, do they just rip the cover, like the binding off, and re-spiral it? I did know that you could get things spiral bound at Staples. I just didn't know you could have a book rebound. But that would actually be really interesting to go do, because that would be really cool to have this book spiral bound. It would make it a lot more usable. So yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say about the Stitch Dictionary. If you guys have more questions, I'd be happy to take them. I don't own a whole lot of crochet books that are not dictionaries. So I have a couple of pattern books, but I keep most of my patterns on Ravelry. So I don't own a whole lot. Let's see what I've got back here. Oh, actually, you were saying that there was a Japanese book of just motifs. It's right here. At least this one is a Japanese book of all motifs. It's very pretty, but these are work as you go motifs. So, or like join as you go, I guess is the correct term. So you don't make a whole bunch and then sew them together. You make one, and then there's a way that you join the next one to it, and you can see how they all work together and link together. But this is a whole book of like lacy motifs. You can see, you can tip the camera up just a little bit so you can see there you go. So yeah, there's just a variety of these motifs, and then a couple of examples on how they stitch them together into a garment. But mostly all thread crochet, though you could certainly take some of these and use them with larger yarn. Huh? Yeah. So. I haven't used that book a whole lot. I'm trying to see what else I've got over here. Not much. So. Yeah. Let's see. They said they take the binding off. The cover stays really nice. Yarn It Out joined us and says hello. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. And also said that they've wanted to get those Japanese books. I really like them. If you don't mind working with charts, they're really nice Stitch dictionaries. There's a lot of unique stitches in them that I've not seen in any other books. They have a lot more intricate stitches, and in a lot of cases, a lot more interesting stitches. So some of these Stitch dictionaries, one of the things that's kind of negative is that almost all of them contain single crochet, double crochet, half double crochet, single crochet in the back posts, or back loops only, that's fine, but I only need so many, basic stitches. What I really want are interesting things. And so the Japanese crochet books kind of skip right over that and go into some really cool stitches. Like, this one's really neat. It looks like it's got, shells or waves or something. Yeah, this, tan one up in the corner. Look how cool that pattern is. it would make such a cool like scarf or wrap or something. And I've never seen such a thing in any other book. Like I said, the biggest problem is that I could make a blanket out of this that would be beautiful and nice and tight and would make a really nice, interesting baby blanket. But then I have no idea what to publish it under. And then it's not searchable, and so it's just it's a little bit of wasted effort on my part because nobody will ever get to see it except for the people who subscribe to my videos.
What was that, number 50? Can you throw
That
book to me?
was tossed it over there. All of the book lovers might be cringing. Wasn't damaged. But yeah, there's some really cool stitches. But there's just no good way to name them. And the I believe the writing on the side, we've tried to read on the side and it didn't have any indication of what it actually, like there was no name in the Japanese on the side, I think we determined.
The Japanese on the side is the chapter.
Oh,
it's
okay.
like shells,
Yeah.
but there's no name associated with each swatch.
Yeah. Joyce is joining us. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're just talking a little bit about Stitch dictionaries. And Runaway Needle Red is also saying hello. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. Again, we're just kind of chatting about Stitch dictionaries. So, kind of went through some of the features that I like in them. If you scroll back a little ways, there's a link to the playlist of.
I don't think they can see the chat. That's from before they joined.
Oh, you can't see the chat before you join? Weird.
On the replay, it will replay the chat, but I think if you join, I don't think it shows anything before you join.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess you can't scroll back in the chat, or possibly can't. But yeah, I just on the channel we've got a playlist of Stitch dictionaries that I've already reviewed, and then a handful that we've been talking about here, that I went through, and then I started this off by explaining the chaos where a publisher published two different books, each under two different titles, one with UK, one with US terms, and made a giant mess for people who bought all 4 books. So, if you want to see the slightly convoluted explanation of that, when the video reposts, you can rewatch that. Yeah, Yarn It Out saying on replay, you can see the links. So, anyway, for anyone joining, that's the playlist of books that I've reviewed in full. And obviously we've talked a lot about some of those books again tonight. So, I would be happy to take any questions from anybody watching. So that's kind of just hanging out tonight. Like I said earlier in the stream, I really haven't been crocheting much in the last week. And so I don't have much in the way of project updates to share. I'd really like to get working on a few things that I've got like partially done. And work on some. I've been kind of into amigurumi dolls recently. And so that's what I've been trying to focus on, as well as I have a cousin who's having a first baby, and I'm trying to get a blanket together that I'm happy with. So I've got like 2 or 3 that I'm working on simultaneously. And I'm not even sure which one I like the most or which one I want to give her. So
if you're going to show anything, you should show from 219 onwards. These are the pineapple stitches.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I was looking to see.
On 219 and onwards. Yeah, those are cool. So pineapple stitches are like a class of stitches. My husband thought we should share these because they're pretty interesting and intricate. But you can see all these different stitches here. see if I can get, there we go. If I turn it like that, so there's a lot of different interesting pineapple stitches. I've seen people use pineapple stitches for beach cover-ups. They're nice and open and airy, but look really fancy. So you can basically make a really tall scarf and then just tie it like to cover a a bathing suit. Or I've seen skirts, I've seen table runners, lots of different options. I can flip the page. But yeah, the pineapple stitches are pretty cool. They're very lacy and intricate. They would be very cool to make a shawl out of if you could figure out the increases properly, so that you could make a shape out of it. There are tons and tons of patterns with pineapple stitches, but if you just wanted to work off of a stitch dictionary, this Japanese Crochet 300 book has a pretty good section of pineapple stitches. So but yeah, I really like these little thin Japanese books with just charts in them. And like I said, they're generally, at least this one I know is available in Japanese and then in simplified Chinese, I believe, is the other option. Stampin' Bandit's asking if we use Google app to translate the writing. My husband reads a tiny amount of Japanese, so he's been reading the edges, and I don't know if were you looking up the symbols that you didn't know, or did you just know most of them?
No, so I read it as pineapple.
Oh, okay.
Then it didn't make any sense to me, so I checked because I didn't know pineapple was a stitch. I just knew it said pineapple.
Okay. So he's been reading the edges, but yeah, there's very little text in here. So the text that's on the edges over here is just the name of like the chapter or the section. And so he read it as pineapple, but it also just didn't make any sense because he didn't know pineapple stitches were a thing. Let's see. Serena said, thanks for doing the live stream, tuning in from Australia. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Hopefully, a lot of these books that we're talking about are still somewhat available worldwide. So, like the Japanese ones I've imported, some of the other US and UK ones should still be readily available. Copperpot's asking if we can put links for the books in the description when the video posts. Yeah, I think we can make that happen. So there's a number of them here. They'll probably just be Amazon links. And you can obviously buy them from wherever you want. I don't have any affiliate links or anything right now. So, but yeah. Yeah, if you guys have more questions, if you want me to show you anything else about the books, or if you guys want to talk about anything else, yarn, crochet, stitch dictionary, whatever. I can talk a little bit about sewing or weaving, I suppose, too. I haven't done much of either. I've got a lot of fabric cut out for a handful of masks that I want to make. But other than that, I haven't even done much in the way of sewing. Not been a very crafty week, I guess. I don't really know what I've been doing. Shopping for groceries? I don't know. So, yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot we had a plumbing problem and we had to rip out all the carpet in the den. I don't know why I forgot about that, but that's what I've been doing instead. My sister's also getting married in 5 or 6 weeks, and so we've been traveling up to her house to help prepare. She's getting married at her house, so help get some stuff done before that all happens. So and I ended up just not crocheting much in the car, even though I didn't drive. I just relaxed, I guess. So Yarn It Out says, yay, another crocheter who sews. Yeah, I mean, I sew a bit. I've done curtains. I made a shirt. I actually took a whole bunch of classes at Joann a couple years ago. I got a gift card, and bought a whole bunch of, like,
That's when they do the classes for cheap.
yeah, so if you catch between seasons, and I don't really know how to tell you when this is, but, like, as they're switching over, like, the sign up for, how do I want to say this? They put out a schedule for, it must be like a quarter. So, like, it would be January, February, March. And when the March calendar is about to end, classes are on sale for 50% off. And so I had a gift card, and then I caught a 50% off sale, and I think I signed up for 4 or 5 sewing classes. I made a zippered pouch. I made a men's shirt. I think I made some kids' pajama pants. I don't remember what else. A table runner, maybe. But I took a handful of sewing classes from Joann Fabric, and the teacher there was a really nice, I think I had 2 different teachers, but one in particular was a really nice lady and really good hands-on teacher. And so I learned to sew enough that I can get by. I've made project bags. I make a lot of project bags. I still buy a lot of project bags, though, too. Yeah, I've made a bunch of curtains. The curtains behind me in this room are, yeah. So this is the style project bag that I like making. It's just drawstring. And I found, like, a lot of little features that I like on other project bags as I buy or see other ones. So this one has a little tab on the side for a key ring. Or a clip, and so I can clip them to my backpack if I want. I like the little 2-tone look. I'm really hoping there's not a spider or something in here. There's a coordinating pocket sewn onto the inside. So I use an outside fabric, and then I sew a coordinating pocket on the inside that I can stick stitch markers or a crochet hook or whatever. And then this size is my favorite size to make. This holds about 200 grams of yarn if you pack it full. It holds a 100-gram shawl near perfectly. So if I do a 100-gram fingering weight shawl, this bag is almost exactly the right size. And can hold the project the whole way through. So sometimes if you get a bag too small, as you turn the yarn into a thing, you can't cram the thing back in there. And so that's the general idea here. Yarn It Out is asking how we do the 2 camera angles. So directly in front of me, and actually the reason that I am often not looking at the camera but slightly off is because my husband's sitting directly in front of me managing the camera angles back and forth. And I have 2 different cameras focused on me. And so he can switch back and forth, and then he also has zoom and focus on the camera over here that I'm now looking at. And so he can pan and rotate that camera and line up the shots. So he does that while the other camera is focusing on me, and then we switch so that, like, I can hold this book up like this, and he can line up a shot, and if I'm pointing at this, particular thing here, he can get that lined up and in focus, and then we can switch, and then you can see what I'm, pointing at or looking at with a little bit more detail. If we're really going, well, we actually have 3 options in screen tonight because my computer is out as well. And if we're going really crazy, we can mount one directly above me and look down. And if I had thought about it, I probably would have had one mounted to the ceiling because we were looking at book pages tonight. But I didn't think it all the way through. So what you can't see is all of the cords for all of our cameras are all run on a drop ceiling. and I've got a mic above me, so it's we've had kind of fun just building the set and making it a little bit crazy and elaborate for just a crochet stream, but it's kind of fun to do it pretty professionally. So you're on the other camera if you're panning around to look. So okay. Okay. But yeah, so it's sort of my craft room and sort of like a set down here. So I've got all of my craft stuff around, but then there's also camera stuff pretty much anywhere I could touch right now. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, it's nice to be able to switch between the two camera angles and not have to have somebody actually operating a camera. And makes it just a little bit of fun to do. Yarn It Out wishes that they could learn that setup. I've tried to convince my husband to do like a side stream of him, like record himself producing the whole stream. So, but that would require another set of cameras operating, watching him do what he's doing. The Yarn It Out is saying they trip on their cords all the time. So if you have drop ceiling, which is the kind like an office with the tiles, they make these little clippy things that we've got on the ceiling. I don't think I have any. Oh, you can show them? Okay. So he's going to show how the cords are run. So you can see where we're looking over there. You can see the cords are on the ceiling, and you can see these little wire clippy things like stuck to the drop ceiling. So all of our cords are run all over the room through those little like fish-shaped clips. And then they hang all from the ceiling. If you don't have drop ceiling, then you've got to find something to attach to the ceiling. We kind of lucked out because this house has drop ceilings in the basement. Not that we couldn't have put them in ourselves, but it works out really well for camera stuff because they make those little clippy things. But those are nice too if you have an office and you want to like decorate, assuming you don't work, in a crazy tall office, but if you work in just a regular office, like I used it to hang all of our Christmas decorations this year at work. I had these big snowflakes that I hung from the ceiling and was able to use the little clippy things, and then I didn't have to like put anything into the drop ceiling or anything like that. Yarn It Out says that they do have drop ceiling in the basement, but film upstairs. Yeah, so probably doesn't work as well. I guess the other thing, if the reason that you film upstairs is like a lighting or some sort of issue like that, I would also recommend if you've got drop ceilings, buying high CRI bulbs. That made a huge difference to our set. So with drop ceiling, we've got fluorescent tube lights, but you can buy really nice fluorescent tube lights that have better color balance. And so we did that, and it makes a huge difference to both filming and being able to see what I'm doing and like matching colors and stuff down here. So that's all like, I think a lot of people avoid shooting in a basement because it's hard to get enough light.
Do shoot in a basement.
Yeah.
Just have dark videos.
Yeah.
And have poor light quality.
Yeah. Oh, Yarn It Out says that they have professional camera lights and photo backdrop. So yeah.
We do too, but
yeah.
The supplemental light from those overheads is so much better with high CRI fluorescent bulbs.
Yeah. Yeah, so what my husband was saying is that we also have studio lights, like professional camera lights, but because we leave the overhead lights on, it's vastly improved by having high CRI bulbs instead of
high CRI fluorescent bulbs are not very expensive.
Yeah, I think we paid like an extra $1 per bulb or something. So and honestly, I think the iPhone has a decent camera on it. Like any of the recent models has a really nice camera.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people do just as well. You know what I mean? Like we have one of the cameras we're shooting on is a professional camera, but as far as cinema camera, but the iPhone is, I think, known pretty well for having a good camera. So yeah, what I was saying before was because we leave the overhead lights on, having them do supplemental light, having them be good lights is important. Otherwise, we'd have to shut them off and use more studio lights to light it properly. Otherwise, we'd be really fighting the different color temperatures of light. You'd have fluorescent lights are usually very blue, so, or can tend to be on the blue side. And you've got nice lights, so it kind of messes up your color. Sorry for the for those of you not as interested in filming or the production on this. Maybe all of you are relatively interested in seeing what we do here, but if anyone has more crochet or yarn related questions, I'd love to hear those too. But yeah, otherwise we're just kind of chatting about streaming and filming. So yeah, I'm kind of just looking around, seeing what we've got going on. I'm trying to think.
No yarn shows.
Yeah, there's no yarn shows. There's no big event, like any types of anything. I'm hoping Wisconsin Sheep and Wool has still happens this year. It's not till September or October, but they might cancel it too because there's really Wisconsin Sheep and Wool is a sort of like a state festival, like a state fair type of thing for people who breed and show sheep. And so if there aren't any of the other shows, like I don't know how that plays in to that whole circuit. Like I don't know if it's part of another grouping and like they might cancel it because of that, but I haven't heard one way or another if it's canceled. But that would be our latest show that we normally go to. Otherwise they aren't till all next year. So other than that, I'm just working like I said, got a lot going on the next 5-6 weeks, and then hoping just to keep working on some amigurumi that I've been messing around with. Like I said, I've been kind of into making dolls, not for any particular reason, but just been interesting. A lot of people joining and saying hello, welcome. Thanks for joining. We're probably towards the end and wrapping up, but I would love to take some questions if other people have questions, things they want to talk about. I've got all my stitch dictionaries out, but I'm happy to talk yarn or crochet or, like I said, sewing, weaving. I can talk a little bit about. So, yeah. Otherwise, I would also gladly take suggestions on a topic for next week. I've bought pretty much all the yarn I can think of for a little while. And yeah, so trying to think. I wish you guys, I sort of wish you could, and then I'm glad you can't. But the pile of yarn is just below the top of the table over here. I don't know. My husband's gonna try and rotate the camera. I don't know if he'll be able to see it, but the pile of yarn is getting out of control. We've bought way too much yarn. We did a big ice yarns. Did a big ice yarns unboxing. We did a big premiere unboxing. I ordered more Premier yarn because I wanted some for amigurumi. Yeah, you can see this mermaid is sitting on top of the heap of yarn. So it's literally all the way back to the bookcase, just packed full of stuff that I've opened in like the last 3 weeks. So if you've missed any of those, please feel free to go back and watch all the unboxings. They're all on the YouTube channel. If you're new to the channel, and you would like to see more like unboxings and things, we do those on a pretty regular basis. You can hit subscribe. And then there's like a little bell that you've got to hit and change the notifications from personalized to all so that you get notifications when we're live. So sometimes we talk about crochet topics and, stitch dictionaries and things like that. And sometimes we do big unboxings. So it's kind of a little bit of a variety on the live stream. Let's see. Trying to catch up on some chat. There's a little bit of chatter going back and forth. Just kind of looking to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Runaway Needle Red said, doing some deep cleaning, still going through her husband's things. Just very sorry to hear that he passed away at Thanksgiving. So, I know that can be hard and takes a long time to go through, all of that stuff that you don't want to necessarily get rid of, but can't hold on to necessarily forever. So, very sorry to hear about that. Let's see, what else? Couple people. Buckle Bunny says that they are subscribed. Well, good. Thank you for being a subscriber. And I know a bunch of the rest of you also are. And so thank you all for that as well. Yeah. For those of you who have watched the live streams the last few weeks, are there any yarns you're particularly interested in seeing me work up or wanting to know a little bit more about that? We unboxed some ice yarns. We unboxed, like I said, some Premier. I did all of the new like spring summery yarns from Lion Brand. So if there's any one particular yarn that you want to know more about or you'd really like to see a review, I'd love to hear those. Maybe I can work up a couple of like little swatches and I can do some mini reviews next week or something like that. If there's some that you're really into. Buckle Bunny says that they're a yarn hoarder, have totes and totes of yarn that their husband buys every trip out of town, so playing catch up. I can say with confidence that I will never ever use all of the yarn that I own, even if I live to 150. I really like having all the yarn possible, and then I still don't have the color that I need for whatever project. I had to order a whole bunch of gray yarn. I think I said this last week, because I had no usable gray yarn in the weight that I needed. And it was like, I cannot believe that I do not have a decent DK weight gray yarn, but I didn't. So I ordered a whole bunch, and now I have a ton. And I'm sure I'm out of some other color. But I have hundreds and hundreds of balls of yarn and not one in whatever color I needed. So, it was extraordinarily frustrating to go through all the bins and not find what I wanted. And so now I have it. Runaway Needle Red wants to know what I think of the ice cottons.
It's gonna fall off.
Oh, I need to go higher. Stampin' Bandit asked what my current favorite yarn is, let's say for softness. What have I been most attached to recently? It's really, really dependent on what type of project. I mean, if I'm making a shawl for myself, that's a very different softness and yarn that I would use than for example, a baby blanket. I bought a whole bunch of the Premier Medley yarn, and I've liked how that's working up. It's a pretty nice yarn, and it's very very similar to me to the DK Colors, which I really liked. It's not similar in look. It's more of a like heathery looking solid, I guess I would call it. Um, it's not really a solid because it's a heather, but it's all one colorway, I guess. Where the DK Colors is a striping yarn, but I've liked working with that recently. Actually, this one is one that I've used a whole bunch of. This is the Yarn Bee Must Be Merino. I've made a bunch of things out of this somewhat recently, and have really liked working with that.
Wasn't there a really nice?
I'm trying to think.
What was a really nice ice yarn that I made the hat with?
Oh yeah, you really liked that. This Rosetto one.
Yeah.
My husband really liked this Rosetto worsted when we made up the hat. It feels really nice, all worked up. Yeah, I just haven't had an opportunity to use it, but I like how it feels worked up. I didn't work up the hat. It was just a circular knit hat. And I don't know where it's gone. It's probably in the heap. Favorite yarn is such a hard one too, because it changes so rapidly. Hopefully that gives you a few ideas, but yeah, it's tough because there's so many good yarns out there. Runaway Needle Red. I'm gonna come. I'm coming back to your question, which is what do you think of the ice yarns cottons? I ordered a whole bunch of the ice yarns cottons. I'm hoping to use them for some amigurumi in like the very near future. So far, I really like the way they feel like in my hand, but I haven't worked with them yet. I'm pretty excited. They feel like really nice yarns. I like that they don't have a whole lot of hair on them. I think they're gonna make a really clean looking finished project. This is the Ice Yarns Alara. Oh, it's actually 50 cotton, 50 polyester. I think I got some 100% cottons somewhere. But yeah, really, really so far I'm pretty happy with them. I just ran into a couple of issues on matching sizing for the project that I had planned on using them for. So I need to regroup and think of another project. Twine Twiddler says that they're making a dress for a little girl, no pattern. How do I know how big to make the armholes? She's not here for me to measure. Are there tables out there to help with sizing? I'm sure that there are tables for doing sizing. I can't think of any resource on armholes, but you probably can look up a standard height chart for let's say you're making it for a 4-year-old, and so there's probably an average height of a 4-year-old, and then there's probably an average like chest width, and there will probably be a way that you can figure out, okay, if the top of her shoulders are roughly here and her actual height is this much, like you can kind of do a little bit of finagling. What you might look for is sewing patterns might be the place to look that would tell you how big the armholes should be. So you might not find a crochet pattern resource, but there probably are more resources for sewing patterns than there are for crochet patterns. You could also look at knitting patterns. So you wouldn't be looking to copy the pattern, but you'd be looking to find the holes for a particular size.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of sewing resources.
Sewing resources, yeah. So my husband said there's a lot of sewing resources out there for dress size. If you can ask her parent, what size kids clothing she's in, you should be able to kind of figure it out from a sewing pattern. Just keep in mind that crochet, depending on which way you work your stitches, can have a lot more stretch than a sewing, like an equivalent sewing pattern, because the fabric wouldn't have as much give and take And so you might want to consider, if you're on a really stretchy stitch or something like that, going down a little bit from whatever the sewing pattern suggests. But that's what I would do. I have also asked parents to measure kids if they know they're getting something. I've asked for, like, I made boot cuffs one time, and it's really really hard to try and guess how big a child's like calf is, and there's not really like standard charts for that. You can get a pretty good guess, but like each kid's going to be real different, and it's going to matter on something like boot cuffs or like leg warmers, where if it's an inch too big, it's just going to fall off. So yeah, you can just ask. A lot of people have measuring tapes, and they will just take the measurements for you. It can be awkward to be like, hey, could you measure your kid for me? But that is a thing you can do. I've also had people take head measurements so that I can get hats right. Because some kids have surprisingly large heads, and so you go to make a kid size hat, and it turns out they're like an adult medium. Let's see. Elaine says, thanks for hosting. Enjoy the show and learn a lot. Do you have any tips for figuring out multiples and the math to increase patterns, or just where to start on baby blankets? So figuring out multiples, most patterns will have the repeat listed out. If you're working off of a stitch dictionary, they are often highlighted. Where's a good example? This is a bad example. This one. That's good. Pictures. So you can see, we're going to switch camera views in just a second, and I'll show you here. You can see that they've highlighted the repeat in like gray along here, and so you can count the stitches along the bottom of the repeat and figure out where the whole thing repeats along. And then one of the other things that you have to count for are starting and ending stitches along the bottom here. So, for example, there's 2 chains off to the side to make the very first stand-in for a half double crochet in this pattern. And so you have to count for those. But most stitch dictionaries will just tell you the multiple. So if it's got written instructions, in this case it says it's chain a multiple of 6 plus 3. So you could chain 72, and then you would add 3 more stitches to 75. And as far as figuring out how big you want it to be for a baby blanket, there are a lot of resources that will tell you how big a baby blanket is supposed to be. I like really small baby blankets. I like to give really small baby blankets because I think they get used more, and don't get beaten up and dragged around quite as badly. Part of that is because I also like to give white baby blankets, and white really can take a beating, as far as just picks up every little bit of dirt and everything. So if you make them smaller, they tend to get dragged on the ground less and things like that. So use a resource if you want to make a standard baby blanket. They're usually somewhere in the ballpark, I think, of about 36 inches wide and roughly the same tall. But yeah, use a resource to tell you how big, or just make it however big you want. There are other resources too for people who make like what they call stroller blankets. So yeah, there's some options there as far as making different sizes. But I guess for figuring out multiples, I probably would use the multiples that the pattern designer, well, if you're working off of a pattern, they should tell you how to increase. If you're working off of a stitch dictionary, they should tell you the multiple. And if they don't, it should be highlighted. And if it's not, then you probably have to start counting and doing math. And that gets into a little bit more advanced crochet and pattern design. Buckle Bunny, I never had much baby yarn. Now with 4 great-grandchildren, I'm keeping very busy sewing masks and scrub hats for my oldest daughter, who's a nurse, and working around COVID. Okay. Let me pull that back apart. Okay. So working on sewing masks and scrub hats. So I've been doing a little bit of mask sewing as well. I've made some for some people at work. I ended up having to wear an ear loop mask for like, I don't know, 5 minutes, and it drove me absolutely insane. And so I made the kind that goes all the way around in a loop. And so I have one loop that sits on the back of my head and one that comes around the back of my hair, and I have a fitted mask. I don't remember the name of the YouTube account that I used to make those masks. It's on the template, I think. I don't know where the template ended up. But yeah, there's lots of ones. This one was just particularly well done, and in making a fitted mask. So, that's the style that I like to work with. Let's see, Judy Little. I've had an entire room full of yarn. I'm a slow crocheter. I'm 76. I guess you could say I'm optimistic. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much every crocheter, every knitter that I know has way more yarn than they'll ever use, and I think that's just true of knitters and crocheters. So we're all yarn hoarders to some degree. Val Ackerman's asking if I could compare bamboo yarns one day. Yeah, that sounds like something doable. I'll have to dig through my stash and find all the bamboo that I've got around, but I do believe I've got probably 3 or 4 of them, so I can definitely do that. Runaway Needle Red says that I wish the ice skeins were larger hanks or balls.
They're really small.
Yeah, so I don't know why they favor 50-gram balls, but some of them are available in 100 grams. The cotton, I think I got as small as 25-gram balls. These little bitty ones I think are 25s. Nope, those aren't. These are. There's been a yarn ample-ish. These little ones I got were 25-gram balls. In kind of an odd yellow that I was hoping would be a good proxy for a similar skin tone to my own, but ended up being just a little bit paler and a little bit yellower toned than I was going for. But I'm sure I can come up with a use for them. They might make a good like doily or something like that. I don't usually have trouble keeping up with chat, but you guys are asking lots of good questions. Thank you very much for keeping the conversation going. Buckle Bunny just agreed and said that they've had daughters measure kids and send me measurements, and the dog. So yeah, that might be the best way to go. The other option is you could consider a dress style that doesn't require an armhole. So something more that either has ties up at the top. So I've seen dresses that stop along here, and then you could work straps up that have buttons, which would make like an adjustable armhole. Or you can always go to like a halter top style, which would tie behind the neck. I don't generally love kids' dresses with halter tops, but it is an option if there's no way to get a good like known size. You can go for adjustable. I have seen a lot of cute ones that tie on the top of the shoulders though, and so you can just adjust it up or down depending on what fits best. Runaway Needle Red said the little skeins mean more to weave in. Yeah, that is true. If you're working a big project, if you've only got 50 grams or 100 meters, you've got to stop every so often and tie all those ends in. So that is frustrating. Okay, so Buckle Bunny's saying she likes the ones with the buttons on the side. I don't know if I've seen them on the side, but I'm trying to picture. I've seen a whole bunch of crochet like bands where you can put the buttons and then pull the ear loops back. I've seen a lot of that happening recently. Is there a different style that has buttons? Found a different one.
I don't know if it's the one she's talking about, but there are ones that attach to like a hairband.
Oh, okay, that would be cool.
It's
yeah.
a hairband with buttons mounted on the sides, and they go up to those instead of your ears.
Okay. My husband was just looking at other options in face masks. It's really interesting how much innovation and like styling can happen in such a short amount of time around something like a face mask. I've got one that I wear every day that's got like a space print. And then some days like my outfit would change and I've got one that's got bees. And so like if I was wearing what I've got on right now, I'd probably have my bee one on. And he's just showing me a different face mask with buttons. Those are actually pretty cool. I haven't seen that style. So I lost my chat. It's okay. But yeah. So what was I saying? Oh, just like how interesting it is. Like so much innovation that will happen around, things like a face mask or something in such a short amount of time. I don't know if that's a function of just people being stuck at home and like making all different sorts of things, or if those things existed ahead of time and kind of came all out of the woodwork. But things like crochet bands with buttons on them to hold the ear straps off of your head, or different patterns, different fits, all of those things. It's really an interesting thing to see happen. So, yeah, yeah. The ear savers are pretty cool. Like a lot of people are using those to just keep the straps off. Like I said, I wore a face mask with ear loops for it was literally less than an hour, and I just felt like the whole backs of my ears were driving me absolutely crazy. And really couldn't handle it for like any longer than that. I don't know how people are wearing them for days and days on end.
The face mask you wear is the multifacetica.
Yeah. So, yeah, the one that I have is by the ones that I've been making are from a lady named Daisy Multifaceta. And she's got like fitted face masks that were very easy to make, and a tutorial on how to put a noseband in, which has been really helpful because I wear safety glasses at work, and so I can pinch the noseband and then put my safety glasses kind of on them. We put the link over there, and then there's like a Google Drive link in the comments where you can get the printout pattern. And I actually printed my pattern out, not really intentionally. I meant to print it, or I wanted to print it out on paper, and my printer was not working. And so I used our photo printer and printed it out on like heavy photo paper, which turned out to be a really good decision because it makes a really nice heavy duty template. And I don't have to worry about so much as I like cut out my fabric and stuff. So that's been actually really good to have it printed on that photo paper. So, sorry. I guess I'm wrapping up for the evening because I keep yawning. I really appreciate all the chat and questions and chatter going on tonight. It really helps keep things moving, and It was a little bit of a slow start chat-wise, but towards the end here, we've been really asking and answering a lot of good questions. So I really like that, and it really helps me keep the stream moving. I don't feel so much like I'm talking to myself, even though like I'm looking at the camera and I see what's going on, and so it feels a little bit like talking into a mirror. And so having the chat there and being able to interact with you guys is a lot of fun. So, um, we generally stream on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Central. Uh, it sometimes that becomes 8:15 or 8:20 depending on how long it takes us to get things set up. We occasionally have to cancel a stream, and I have been pretty good about posting on Instagram, Facebook, and on the YouTube community tab. If you'd like to follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Experiments in Crafting, you can find me on both of those platforms. And if you ever have questions during the week or just want to, share a picture of something you were working on, you can send me direct messages or tag me in posts on either Facebook or Instagram. But otherwise, unless there's any last minute questions that somebody wants to get in, we'll probably go ahead and wrap up the stream for the evening. And again, we'll stream again next week. I have a couple of people who asked some questions. I'll try and work with a little bit of the Ice Yarns cotton and see if I can give you some feedback. And then somebody else asked about bamboo yarns. If I can gather some of those up, maybe we'll talk a little bit about those as well. If there are other yarns that you guys are dying to know about that I opened recently on unboxing, different live streams, please let me know in the comments section or send me a message and say, hey, I'd really like to see this yarn or really like to know what you think about it. I'll dig those out and try and work like a little square or something just so I can say, yes, it's a good yarn, or no, it works terribly. Because that's really what most people want to know is it garbage or not? So, and occasionally the answer is yes, it's garbage. So, if you guys are interested in things like that, send me a message or leave a comment in the video once it finalizes and posts. Can you comment before it's all done uploading? I'm not sure. So it takes, I don't know, like 40 minutes usually for the videos to post. Sometimes it's been taking a couple hours. But yeah. All right. Well, I am going to say good night and have a good week and hope to see you all next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.